Thank you, Susanne and Zacharia, for organizing this nice workshop and inviting all of us to discuss and to go together to the famous Silk Road. I apologize for not having missed the morning session due to other obligations, but I'm very happy to be here now. The plane was not late, and it was worthwhile to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And sorry when I'm a little bit confused, maybe myself, or confuse you with my talk. But I hope that I will structure now my talk well. The material that I'm going to present to you is very much in line with what we just we're listening to. It goes about infrastructure, and it is based on my research, which I started already in 2011 in the eastern provinces of Iran, Khorasan, Sistan, and Baluchistan. From 2011 to 2015, I'm still in touch with the field, and I'm regularly updating my data, but I'm not anymore doing field research with the same intensity. So what I want to point out to this in the following presentation is the importance of the transit road which runs along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border from northern Iran down to the Persian Gulf, called the North-South Corridor, or the famous New Silk Road. And it affects regional development in eastern Iran on the one hand, but also it strengthens the geopolitical role of Iran related particularly to the Central Asian countries. So what I'm going to do now, it is not only to present you the result and the conclusions of the contents of my research, but I would very much like to take your attention also to our methodology, particularly in anthropology. And I always regret a little bit in other conferences that we don't get sufficient about the methodology, because it says so much about our theories and about our results and the conclusions, and it gets more transparent. So I will be moving between methodology and the results, and I hope it will be understandable at the same time. So I will, in the following, proceed in 3 steps. First, embedding the research in a larger framework, addressing the overarching question. Second step, I will try to adapt this broader question to local conditions and the subsequent collection of data. And then the third step, summing up the results and reflecting which lessons we can take out of this research and how far eventually we can transfer these conclusions or apply these results to other research on other parts, talking to, always about this Silk Road. So my first point, I move this, okay. The first step, the research was part of an interdisciplinary project called Crossroads Asia, bringing together a group of 16 academics. There were historians, linguists, geographers, political scientists, and anthropologists, all specialized on Central Asia. The background or the basic idea of this project was the concept of area studies. You all know about this. There was a big debate about it. And very briefly, it says that we shouldn't focus anymore on these regional studies, but focus more on global trends, mobility of people, goods, ideas, and what makes the world more complex. Our area under study covered here in this white part. It goes from eastern Iran to western China and from southern Russia to northern India. The theoretical frame of this project was based on Norbert Elias' concept of figuration, which again very, very briefly says that we have to consider the social field as an interdependent network. And they always bring the same example that we have to see the social field as a playground of football. When one player is changing his strategy, then the whole system will change. So the social field is the same. The common topic that we decided after long discussions to work on all together was mobility related to migration, development, and also generating conflict. Now, I come to my second step, how to transfer the overarching questions to research at the local level. The task for me, specialized on Iran, was to point out, no, I'm going back. Yeah, here. So, to point out how the eastern Iranian provinces were interconnected to other parts of the area under study, and whether and how social political transformations in this area affected any position or the situation in Iran. So it was, on the one hand, the geopolitical question, and on the other hand, from an anthropological perspective, it was the focus of the study to show how this mobility, these trans-border movements affected the everyday life and practices of the population. To focus on the research question at local level, we have to look a little bit more on the geopolitical situation of Iran. As you may see on this map, all these neighboring countries of Iran are landlocked, so without access to the sea. So the only way for Western goods arriving from the Persian Gulf into the central countries is to go through the way here from the Persian Gulf up to either here from northern Pakistan, Afghanistan, and then Turkmenistan and all the other countries. When we talk about methodology, we have to mention that, of course, to do research on mobility, you are not necessarily obliged to be mobile yourself. Only if you want to grasp the level of experience and the situation when decisions are made and how they are put into action, then there is no other way than to apply the anthropological methodology, which is at the heart of anthropological research, the participant observation. So I decided first to stay in one this is the road.
It's
you
not
see?
Visible on the arrow is not, you can't see the arrow here.
Oh, you cannot see the arrow? Okay. So I have to get up and, can I move this on? Yes. You see? So this is the road you see here up. I think this is visible. And then, yeah, this is Nashtifan, you can recognize up there. I decided to stay at this small place with 5,000 inhabitants, 30 kilometers from the Afghan border, a traffic hub, a crossroad where all trucks, lorries, vans, all kind of vehicles, as well as people and goods had to go through to get down to the Persian Gulf and vice versa. Well, now, as you may imagine, and others who have been working on this infrastructure topic know that trucks, lorries, transport agencies, roads, all these is man's world. There is no place for women. So I decided to live with a family who were very much involved in business, but they were they didn't have anything to do with transport. But this was a very knowledgeable family, could tell me a lot about the history of the region. And first thing I tried to do was to understand what is the meaning of mobility and also immobility. Who are the actors involved in mobility, particularly in the transport business? Where do the goods come from? Who are the suppliers? Who are the receivers? What about connectedness, relations beyond political and geographical boundaries? So after 2 months, I came to the first following primary conclusion. Iranian government was quite aware of its extraordinary geopolitical position and the role in the whole transfer of goods between Western countries and the Central Asian markets. Now, to strengthen its position, Iran had to focus particularly on 3 levels. First of all, they had to look after security on the borders, Afghanistan, Pakistan, against smuggling, traffic of drugs and arms. Second, promotion and expansion of its infrastructure. And third, once infrastructure and road building was achieved, they had to step up, driving forward to industrialization, particularly exploitation of mineral resources. And here, luckily, we had 30 kilometers away from this Najdifan, we had Sangan, a source of iron ore, one of the richest in Iran. So that now, as far as the population was concerned, to invest in the purchase of trucks and lorries became the main source of income. They abandoned agriculture, they sold their land, and they bought these lorries or trucks, and they transported from Najdifan, near of this border, this iron ore, on this road of 2,400 kilometers down to the Persian Gulf, and tried to get as soon as possible charges for any kind of goods which arrived in the Persian Gulf to get up again back to Najdifan in 36 hours. Well, you can imagine how exhaustive this work could be. And the drivers I was talking to, they told me that this is not a job that you are doing a whole life. It is about 7-8 years, and then you have to retire. Now, to have access to raw material, transport, etc., the drivers needed particular permission from the state, from the government institutions. They had to pay insurance, they had to pay taxes, etc. And in this way, they were administratively registered by the state authorities and involved in bureaucracy and were under state control. Experiences they had never before, because this was a rural area which was neglected during the last 50 years. So, after having this insight into the local condition, the topic of my research became finally quite clear. It turned more and more to the understanding of the dimension of infrastructure and its effect on the everyday life of the population. How did public and private investment result into the transfer of technology, knowledge, and goods? in this peripheral region. Now, to understand and grasp the complexity of the relation between state agencies, regulations, laws, and the relation the drivers were involved in, and how they were bypassing also these laws, it was necessary to share the experience of the drivers. How could I have access to drivers and agencies organizing this traffic business? And this is here where anthropological methodology comes in again. Why it is so important to do long-term research and to stay for a long time in one locality. It's only in this way that you can get the trust and confidence of people. So I could finally manage to become good friends with the family of one driver who agreed that I accompany him on one of his trips down to the Persian Gulf and back again. We spent 36 hours together, traveling from Nashdifan to Bandar Abbas and back again, the tour he was used to do 4 times in a month. This was an adventurous journey and a fascinating trip, which gave me the occasion to grasp finally the narrative the many drivers and transport managers, all those being involved in the transport business, had told me. Now, to come to the last part of my presentation, what are the results? Can we get any insight, any new knowledge, erkenntnis? Susanne knows that I'm always looking for this erkenntnis finally out of the research to be applied to similar researches elsewhere. Now, before summing up the result of the research, I would like to take you back again to the question of methodology. And particularly, you have been talking about it already a little bit. What does it mean to anthropologists to do research on the dimension of infrastructure, development? What aspects do we research? Is it really something new? Is it a new topic, infrastructure? My experience in Eastern Iran showed me that there is a high portion of technological knowledge and expertise, bureaucracy, prescription, instructions, and regulations. People are talking all the time about it, and you as a researcher, you are confronted with. But frankly, I'm not interested in road building, and I'm not interested in technology and neither in engineering. The question which remains at the heart of anthropological research, in my view, is still there. What does all this do with people? At that point, I think the research becomes quite difficult, and there is not only one answer. There are different answers and conclusions you come. As far as my research is concerned, I have 3 levels on which I think that it is important when we talk about and we do research on infrastructure. First, infrastructure creates new hierarchies. There are new elites and there is absolute new leadership. So, in fact, it is a question of power. It is divide of power. And it is something anthropologists have always been concerned with. Second, infrastructure causes new responsibilities, duties, and challenges. So this goes back to morality, values. This again is something anthropologists have been doing. And the third is infrastructure affects mutual dependencies, requires new networks. And this again is agency. So if we are talking about this new field of research infrastructure, it is a question if we are doing anything new or we are doing the old things with a new label on it. Now, as far as our initial question related to area studies is concerned, the following conclusions have been drawn out of my research. The interconnectedness and interdependencies of Iran with other parts of the area under study could be absolutely supported through my research. However, only at the economic and political level. It was absolutely surprising for me to find out that at the individual level of neighborly relations with Afghanistan and Pakistan, there is a deep feeling of animosity, mistrust, and lack of confidence at the Iranian-Afghanistan border as well. This concerns conflict. I do not have any data on that, and this concerns certainly also the history. As for regional development, due to the construction of this famous Silk Road, it is evident that through infrastructural expansion and economic development, new jobs are brought in. Technological and administrative knowledge is acquired, and people's everyday life is confronted with modernization. But the question arises, how sustainable are the current plans of the Iranian government for development and modernization in this area? From my personal observation, and this is a very, very important point I want to make here, the transit road that has been built in the eastern part of Iran so far is actually only a corridor in the sense of passageway, Durchgang, passageway, through which the goods imported from the West, East, and South Asia are transported in order to be distributed somewhere in the northern countries of Iran. In that sense, I think it is problematic and very questionable to talk about even new Silk Road, as our idea of Silk Road is still connected with encounter, get to know the unknown, acquisition of knowledge, sharing experiences, creating networks. None of these aspects apply in the case of Iran. Iranian truck and lorry drivers avoid staying longer than necessary in any place. Time is precious, time is money. And anyway, to meet drivers from abroad and to talk to them is very rare, as the transit road is only used by Iranian drivers. High taxes and strict regulations established by the Iranian authorities make it extremely difficult for foreign drivers to use the transit road. Now, to sum up, we can draw the conclusion that the population in eastern Iranian provinces remains still on the periphery, despite the promise that through the construction of the so-called New Silk Road, modernization and development would be brought in. Development not reflected only in terms of economic progress, but understood in the sense of transformation of livelihood and outlook on life is still missing. Thank you.